Can you intentionally build an innovation ecosystem that people actually want to live in? We'll talk about that today on Builders Live. Hey, I'm Chris Wink. I'm the co-founder and publisher of Technically, the news organization with a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. We cover place-based economic development around the country, and we do a lot of focus on the entrepreneurial journey, building companies, attracting investors, matching people. But something we try not to forget about is those people have to live somewhere. So it's difficult to cover the entrepreneurial journey, matching science and technology without coming back to where people live and whether they want to live there in the first place. Something that for 20 years we at Technically have tried to focus on is the place where people do this work. I'm going to talk a bit about placemaking with Scott Levitan. He's the newly announced outgoing president and CEO of the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. Scott, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity and to meet you.
Same. And thanks for this time. It's a conversation near and dear to my heart. Is how is economic development thinking about placemaking, how that shifts? Help me with some context setting first. If you could bring me back, you come into this role, I'm thinking about a decade ago, and I think 2017 in my notes. You step into a portion of North Carolina that is having a great upswing. North Carolina has been in a decades-long population growth period. The Research Triangle has had strong momentum, but you still come into 2017 with some unfinished parts of the work. So help me with what 2017 looked like for Research Triangle Park or the strategy of what you're doing now.
Sure. So I might step back just a tad further. So Research Triangle Park is 66 years old. And when we were founded in the late 50s, I was 4 years old for one thing, and I'm not anymore. And there was one research park in the world. It was Stanford Research Park. It was an idea. It had been Stanford wanted to do commercialization and have a place for that to happen. And the business leaders of North Carolina heard about it. They researched it, and they said, we have to make one of those in North Carolina because our economy was tanking. You know, our three-legged stool was furniture manufacturing, textiles, and agriculture, and all of those were changing industries without a bright future. And so we heard about it, and believe it or not, Huntsville, Alabama heard about it, where Werner von Braun had been hired after World War II to build our country's jet propulsion program.
Right.
And so Cummings Research Park and Research Triangle Park were the second and third research parks in the world. And at that time, research and commercialization were completely different. Companies had their own research labs, things like Bell Labs existed.
Right.
And so commercial research happened here. Basic science happened in the universities. And when we were founded and we were trying to promote ourselves to the three universities that create the triangle, which are University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Duke University, and North Carolina State University, the founders were pitching this idea of a commercialization of university intellectual property to the public. And there is a quote, I won't say which university it was, but the head scientific officer at that university said, and this quote is in a book about us, so let me get this straight. You want my research faculty to be your whores, and you're going to be the pimp.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Dim view. Yeah.
So the world has changed. Universities and industry and government are integrally have convened around research and commercialization and translating research that happens at universities into commercializable assets. And I think we've found that there's a renewed interest of that in Washington, particularly around the Department of War and, being ready to defend our country and advance our country economically, politically, and from a security perspective. So that's where we are today. So I came in 2017, 9 years ago, and the physical model of RTP had not changed for 65 years, although the functional model, the operational model has significantly changed. And so that's what we've been doing for 9 years as a team here at RTP.
Well, say a bit more about that functional change since.
Yeah.
So what you step in 2017, when you survey the land, what you feel like something needs to change, and what has happened over that time.
Well, land is the operative word because I'm a dirt guy, and that's why they hired me. Our zoning model, we have one little sort of downtown in the center, which is called Hub, that we decided to kick off because talent attraction is everything. Competition for talent is really everything. And to attract that kind of talent, you have to have amenities, you have to have entertainment, you have to have outdoor recreational opportunities, you have to have places to live close to work, and good public transportation and great public schools. And so Hub RTP, the new downtown, was really our beta test for whether we could pull that off. But in general, we all the rest of the 7,000 acres, which is half the size of Manhattan Island, we are 10 miles tall by 3.5 miles fat in the middle of the third fastest growing region in the country. All the rest was zone one way. It was, you could have a building that covered 15% of your land area. You had to have a 100-foot buffer of pine trees. You call it a veil of pines around the perimeter. And then the rest, you pretty much pave with surface parking. And if you fly over RTP, that's sort of what it looks like. Now, here we are. We look at regions that have grown differently faster, and we see that there's a lot more integration around these research and development campuses, which are really the model for RTP. So we determined, and we got a lot of support, that as such a fast-growing region, we're 2 million people today, we're going to add 1 million more people over the next 20 years. So 1 million people need 400,000 dwelling units, 20,000 new dwelling units a year every year for 20 years. And our current rate of production in our region is about 9,800 units. So we could look like every other innovation community in North America. We could just sprawl over our forests. We could sprawl over our agricultural land that surrounds the Triangle region. And so we decided as a region, because it took the partners, it took our board, it took the universities, it took we actually are so large that we span 2 counties, Wake County and Durham County. And it took our Owners and Tenants Association 5 years to figure out, well, how do we want to grow smart in the Triangle region? How can RTP continue to do its important work? We have 55,000 employees. We're the biggest economic development center in North Carolina. We want to preserve that, and we want to embrace our success for 65 years. But what else can we do with this tremendous land resource to be more competitive, to maintain our competitiveness? I mean, now if you look at North America, there's over 400 research parks. The playing field has changed a lot. And, North Carolina, the state government, the General Assembly, the governor, they've been very supportive of economic development in North Carolina. And you can tell by our rankings as the best state or second best state to do business for repetitive years. But how do we accommodate that kind of growth, and how do we grow smarter? And so with that pretense, we embarked on something called RTP 3.0, which was to revision RTP for the next 50 years.
I want to get into that, but I can't run away from one point you sparked for me. In my sense of North Carolina, I know this is always dynamic, but I view North Carolina still being one of our states in this country that purplish, and that the bipartisanship that I perceive on the outside of North Carolina, I know everyone battles. I'm not naive, but that I perceive North Carolina ending up with this kind of balance of we have some intentional planning spirit. We have some, dare I say, even kind of urbanity of wanting to create some serendipity and density, but we have a lot of pro-economic development. How are we not over-regulating? How are we I view through the lens of North Carolina at times the best of two sides of this coin. And I guess I'd love you to like push on me. Is that a fair narrative? How do you view North Carolina's distinct culture playing out at RTP and making this? I heard you talk about a lot of issues that would please all sides of the political spectrum. How intentional is that? How much does that kind of create what RTP is doing?
Well, so I'm not a political expert, but everyone lives in politics. So
Yeah.
we're about a 10 or 11 million population state, and still the majority of our residents live in rural areas of North Carolina. We are predominantly a rural state with tremendous nodes of, economic development happening in our more urbanized areas like the Triangle, Charlotte, Wilmington, Asheville, and others. So politics, so the aspiration is shared regardless of what political party you're affiliated with. How does the economic how do these centers of economic growth lift up everyone in North Carolina? So that's always sort of an underlying theme about the disparity between very successful regions of our state and those that sort of are still continuing to lose population, lose jobs. And so one of the amazing things that has happened in the 9 years that I've been here, it started, I don't take credit for it. It's a group effort, but North Carolina has become very, very attractive for advanced manufacturing facilities in biomanufacturing, aeronautics, technical manufacturing. We're just really good at manufacturing. We have great utilities, great roads, and we also have a great university and community college, tech college network. Just Durham Tech and Wake Tech, serving our two counties, have 110,000 students enrolled, which is phenomenal. And so when companies look at our region, they see the first most pressing challenge they face: how do I get the talent and workforce that I need and can train and retrain people over time? They, hands down, we're at the top of the list around the country. And so we win the first battle with the workforce that we can produce in North Carolina, and particularly in the Triangle region. But one of the wonderful things that has happened is RTP is very well suited because of its location among the research universities. North Carolina Central University, the closest to us, NCA&T, which is down the road in Greensboro. We're really uniquely suited for really high-tech R&D kind of activity, which happens in the Triangle. But when it comes to advanced manufacturing, we don't have the land or the power requirements or the utility requirements to be able to accommodate 1,000-acre advanced manufacturing facilities. So those have clustered in the halo counties around the three counties that make up the Triangle. And then when you think of the catchment area for an advanced manufacturing facility that is going to hire 3,000 people, let's say, and there's probably 20 of them that have been announced over the 5 years around RTP alone, that starts to spread the beauty of a nation society much further out. So the recruiting distance for $100,000, $120,000 advanced manufacturing jobs extends into the center of the state and way out into the eastern area of the state. And to me, and I don't know if everyone shares this position, but that finally fulfills the promise of RTP, that we want to benefit, we want to enhance the economic benefit of families across North Carolina. And I would say that we've probably gotten to the point where RTP or RTP adjacent generated jobs are now probably benefit, at least just on the job side, not on the tax revenue side, but probably benefit 50 out of the 100 counties in North Carolina. And we should be very proud of that as a state.
It sounds like coalition building is a theme that shows up in a lot of our reporting about how you build statewide coalitions. So that's a note worth calling out for folks. One other clarification there before I go back to RTP 3.0 more broadly, but I blame you. You sent me down this little rabbit hole because it's something you said that stuck with me. I've done some reporting on how much, housing and quality of life is part of building innovation communities, and that economic developers overlook that at their own peril. And North Carolina, from the outside, my reporting, one of its strengths was relative high quality of life, relative cost. The tension we have nationally is this oversimplified, but the story would be that some parts of our country overregulated, it went to one side, made building even more expensive than it needed to be, and others went the other extreme, very little regulation, made it very easy to build, but resulted in sprawl. And what I heard you describe is an attempt to try to split that difference of how do we build with intention. One of the questions I guess I'm interested in is how you're balancing this. Building with a kind of intention to create the serendipity that we know supports the flywheel, the economic flywheel we're interested in, but not raising that cost so much that we lose North Carolina's competitive advantage, which is a relatively high quality of life for cost of living. Yeah. So talk a little bit about threading that needle between how do we do it right, the right amount of planning, because I'm sure much of the country would love to hear a silver bullet for that challenge.
Well, I think you'll find that, and this isn't unique to North Carolina, it's more of a national issue, that we are finding that the formula for achieving the dream of owning your own home, it's going to be a lot easier to do if we can produce more inventory than it is to subsidize our way out of into an affordable housing market. And so I think that RTP 3.0, when we get into the details, we definitely want to provide opportunities to create more inventory, to densify existing land. We hear about ADUs all over the country and the fights over ADUs, but put this land in the center of this third fastest growing region in the country to a more enhanced use while preserving the opportunity for these companies to be in RTP. So we're approaching it from an inventory and supply perspective.
Okay. So I want to ask more, but I can't because I only have a few more minutes with you, and I want to get deeper into RTP 3.0. So let's go to that. My setup, our interest in this, what's distinct, anyone who's nerdily interested in the history of how we do innovation districting or how we kind of intentionally drive forward innovation will know that the 20th century R&D model was framed around isolation. We want to hide people away to do secret work, both metaphorically and literally. And so in some way, your live work play feels very much the opposite. Talk to me a bit about the strategy behind that. Sure. Why live work play if you're also doing, elite emerging research?
Sure. So the first premise that we had to establish when we approached 400 companies in RTP and our 2 county commissions and our board was don't break what's working. Companies, there is a beauty for we are a big ag bio market. That's one of our 5 industry clusters. Ag bio often has greenhouses associated with it. We have a lot of greenhouses in RTP. So we had to be very thoughtful because a greenhouse and a bedroom window don't coexist very well together. And so the first thing to even get our companies and our property owners to the table was to say, look, if you like your current zoning setup, if you're doing really well with, I'm sorry, You're
a man in demand. I get it.
If you're doing really well as a business in our region and you want to stay and you want to do it just like you're doing it now, please, we're not going to disturb that at all. Keep doing it, okay? But there were these other factors in terms of growth, in terms of quality of life, in terms of close access to where you work, in terms of what the workforce of the future wants and maybe doesn't want to drive 2 hours to work every day to get from a house out in the suburbs into your office. We're going to provide some enhanced entitlement options for you. And so there were 3 enhanced entitlements. So the base zoning, which the 2 counties approved, allows for the existing status quo to remain in place. But there are 3 enhanced entitlement options. One, let's say you're a multinational, you're looking at you're thinking about federal government policy, you're looking at your worldwide portfolio, and you really like doing business in RTP and you want to densify in RTP, but the land use model is just too limited. You have all this surface parking. We're going to allow you to densify on your site and enhance your corporate campus. And if you want to bring in a restaurant that you open or a gym or something that's open to the public, you couldn't do that before, but you'll be able to do that now. So that's called the enhanced corporate campus. The other option is, and we've limited this to about 500 acres total out of the 7,000 acres, because we don't want RTP to be overrun and just become a residential community. That's not our purpose in the world. We're here to support economic development and research and development. Both counties have comprehensive plans that envision 15-minute walkable communities. So for that 500 acres in the RTP, about 7% of the total land area, we're complying with the county aspirations and in their comprehensive plans, and you can do 15-minute amenitized residential communities. No single family housing. That's probably going to have to go somewhere else. Our land is too important and too centrally located to be able to accommodate that. We wouldn't get enough production, but really nice walkable communities. And what's interesting about those, and it'll be interesting to watch how they play out, those don't really exist very much in the Triangle region, but folks from outside of the Triangle region who are moving in for these jobs and the quality of life that you mentioned, they're accustomed to those kind of communities, and they'll like having that opportunity among the various housing opportunities they have in the Triangle. And then the third is we have started this beta site, Hub RTP, which is the new centrally located downtown for RTP. We've already invested about $750 million in that, and the total investment will probably get up to $2.5–3 billion. They're probably in a land parcel this big as the region densifies. There are probably going to be some opportunities for additional mixed use, dense, high rise opportunities within RTP, and so there are these opportunities for you to get enhanced entitlements to do mixed use, high density development.
I'm gonna lose you, and I want to reserve a chance to give kind of a wider look from you after decades of your work. But on that point, I got to imagine one of the challenges any placemaker gets when there's any kind of strategy is someone says, well, that's not what our community is about. We don't have those things. We don't have that density. What's kind of your go-to answer when someone pushes and says, that's not what we're about?
Well, we haven't gotten it, and we've been at this for 5 years, and we've rezoned between 2 counties. We've gotten 400 property owners and landowners, property owners and companies to approve unanimously. We've gotten our very diverse board, including 4 university chancellors and presidents, to approve it. I think folks are ready for our region to put on their big boy pants and take this on, and this doesn't impact any existing community. There are many communities in our region that are suffering, that are bemoaning gentrification, displacement of folks because property values are going up, infill is happening, and they're being driven out of their houses. This opportunity of 3.0 does not cause any of those outcomes.
You made me think. I can remember doing years ago an interview in a rural county that had some criticism about this density isn't like us. That's like the city thing. And I remember pushing back because I grew up in a pretty rural small town, but it was an old enough a small town that much of its infrastructure had been built pre-car, and so it had charming walkability, not because a planner invented it, but because its origins, its bones predated car infrastructure. And so we had charming houses. There's now since been a photonics company that has grown up in this small town. And now I go back to that town I grew up in, and it makes complete sense to me. It's very charming. It's a lovely place to live and walk to work with this advanced research. And so what I've done that, and I'm curious how much this is in your mind as an economic developer, yes, density is sometimes coded urbanity, and sometimes that is a bad word in some communities. But I think so often about university campuses around the world and small towns around the world have a kind of density initially for logistics, but we now have research and understanding that putting a lot of smart people together, creating serendipity and that those bumping into one another is incredibly dynamic. Like, so I guess I'm curious, how much is that part of your own view here of to continue the economic dynamism that RTP represents for North Carolina, the country? We need to make sure we're putting people in proximity with each other, not just in an office, but also when they're walking the dog or going over there, or is that part of your own sense of this work?
Well, it is. I think I'll be very interested to watch the outcome. I'm not sure I'm going to make it another 50 years, but at least I'll be able to see 20 years or so of it. I will say that one of the things that impresses me about North Carolina and the Triangle in specifically are that, and it is a pitch that our economic development people use very strongly, we're accessible enough that if you want to live in a small town, there are small towns within half-hour commuting distance from RTP or any of our downtowns. If you want to live in a college town, you can do that. If you want a giant house on a lake with 5 acres, you can do that. If you want a farm, you can commute from a farm to a job in RTP in about 45 minutes. And we have urban, our Durham, Chapel Hill, Raleigh have all built a lot of housing in their urban core, more urban kind of housing. So we're not New York. We don't aspire to be. We're never going to be New York. But the diversity of housing options within the Triangle region is really notable. And I think it may not be unique everywhere, but it is a characteristic of an attraction for people who want to live in the Triangle.
Well
so
said.
we're probably going to be providing some new typologies that don't currently exist in the Triangle. And we think that just adds to the attractiveness because folks in other markets are used to that kind of product that we're not able to provide yet. And they'll be able to find it, will enhance those selections. When we were doing research for RTP 3.0, we took our team, we took our board members, we flew to some amazing projects around North America, some of them out of the country. And we really educated ourselves on these are really cool, desirable kind of communities that we can't offer in the Triangle right now. So why don't we try to sculpt this zoning and planning model to be able to accommodate some of those additional typologies?
Scott, I'm going to lose you here in a minute. I already gone over, so sorry for that. Calls pointed out that I went late. So, but final kind of parting shot, you have announced retirement. I think you're out end of September, early October. You've been at this work a while. We're in a contested age in our country. So I wonder if you give me your optimistic take. You are in the final stage of this portion of your career, looking out what gives you optimism about this kind of placemaking that you've been a part of for so long.
Well, I'm a little spoiled because one of the I've worked in a number of markets. I've worked in Baltimore, New York City, Boston, Atlanta, and in here. And I will say that the experience that I've had in 9 years here is this collaborative effort among entities that in some markets tend to we call it co-opetition.
Right.
So when our economic development team or our elected official leaders or our state Department of Commerce and Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, when they're pitching our region or when they're pitching North Carolina, I have to say they're paid to pitch their constituent location. But we celebrate the wins regardless of where they land in North Carolina. And that is a really unique way to approach economic development, business attraction. And I am very optimistic that this region has just begun to get its legs. And I'm so lucky to be here. First of all, I'm lucky to stand on the shoulders of giants, because the people who invented RTP had a vision that, first of all, it's come true, and second, it was a phenomenal vision. But to be able to reshape that and and plan for the next 50 years, I really think we've hit on the right formula. And it's not prescribed. I don't think it's going to be 50 years before we come back to the documentation that we've implemented and the regulations that we've implemented. I hope that it is a living document and we learn from each step, and we just keep building on it and improving it based on the experiments that we're going to continue to do on reinventing this Research Triangle Park region.
Scott Levitan is the president and CEO, the outgoing CEO of the Research Triangle Park. Congrats on your next stage, Scott. We discussed building innovation ecosystems with intention, including the dynamic live work play that is leading to RTP 3.0 in the Research Triangle in North Carolina. Scott, thank you so much for being here.
Chris, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate speaking with you.
Same. See you next time, everybody. Bye.